Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be looking at how to draw anything with fountain pens. So today I'm going to show you 4 simple techniques, some of which are specific to fountain pens, some of which you can use generally to tackle any subject. So if you find this useful, don't forget to like and subscribe, and let's start with the first subject and let's start with the first technique. And just so you guys know, today I'll be sketching with a Lamy Safari fountain pen, which is a good, cheap, interesting pen to use, particularly for a beginner. If you want any more information on the Lamy Safari, check out these other videos up here, and let's get started. As anybody knows who follows this channel regularly, you know I do love my boats. So what we're going to do here is we're going to have a look at this beautiful winter scene, and we're going to take 2 points on this boat. We want the boat to sort of roughly fill the middle bit there of the page, so we're going to choose 2 points to start with. So what I suggest you do with something like this is you put a point on the front, which is your bow, and then you draw a line, imaginary line, to where you think the stern is. Now that's going to be probably somewhere about there. Now follow the bow down to where it meets the water. So that's going to be approximately there. Now what you can do then is you can start thinking about connecting up some of these points, but the first thing I would think about is the overall width. So what is the widest bit of the boat? Well, that's going to be about there, and then on this side, it's the widest bit is, look at that reference point and think about how it flares out around that corner, and it's below, actually slightly below that line. So what you're doing is, by putting these dots in, is you're effectively creating what is a sort of silhouette, really. Okay, so we've got those points there. Now I'm looking at this now and thinking the bow perhaps is a tiny bit further down. So we're going to put that in. Okay, so we can start connecting some of these shapes. So with something like a boat, there's this beautiful curve that goes from the back to the front. So we can actually sketch that in there like that. And then on this side, we know it's the same, but it kind of comes down at an angle like that. There, if you look at that side, and then this bit comes down to meet it, but it goes slightly like that. So that's going to come slightly like that. Now looking at this bow, it's not a straight line between where it goes into the water and there. It's got a slight curve to it. So we can put in those as a slight curve like that. And then here we have this post with some rope around it there. Now, so what happens on the sides of the boat? Well, we can think about that shape there. If you look, you can see that what happens is it comes back a tiny bit and then it flares around. We're not going to worry about the planks on the boat because that's a bit more complicated, but we know that sort of does that. And then that comes forward like that. So then really it's just a case of looking at, well, what else is going on? We know there's a big plank that runs right around the outside there. We know we've got a seat in here. You can see that. And there's various planks going in various directions inside the boat. So there you go. So we've put those dots in, and using those dots, we've effectively made a silhouette, and then we've sort of worked in to create the various details of the boat. And then from there, obviously, you could put the ropes in and do all the bits and bobs. There's some lovely little sort of nail details, which you see on lots of old boats. Oh, now I'm getting excited by this boat. I want to finish drawing it, but I've got other stuff to do, so I'm not going to get bogged down with that. So there you go. So with all shapes, basically, just as a really quick conclusion, with all shapes, you can use dots to, create a sort of silhouette effectively. But the way I find it most useful is just to choose some points. And one of the great things about this technique is it really makes you think about how certain elements line up with other elements. Like, what is the angle between this part and this part? What is the angle of the bow? And it's the same when you're drawing anything. Say, for example, if you were drawing faces, is you could put a dot on the end of the nose and go, what angle is it up to the edge of the eyebrow? Well, that's basically at that angle. And then between those two, where is the other eyebrow? Well, the other eyebrow finishes over there. So you can start to, fill in those things there. And then, well, there's a nostril there. And then where's the eyeball? Well, the eyeball's there. So, and then where, you know what I mean? So once you have one point of reference, when you're drawing something like a boat, the bow seems like an obvious one. Once you have one point of reference, you can add dots in and create all around that. So there you go, that's the finished boat. I couldn't resist putting a tiny little bit more shade and things in there. It's a fun one. So my Christmas giveaway this year is this little original piece that I did a couple of years ago of Staithes in North Yorkshire. And if you'd like to have this little piece of original artwork on your wall, and then just type "I want this" in the comments below, and I'll get it posted out. I'll choose somebody at random in a couple of weeks, sort of around Christmas time, and then we'll be giving this away. So yeah, it's a nice little piece. That's a lot of fun. So that's the dot technique, and that's really useful because it doesn't leave a lot of marks on the paper, which means that it doesn't distract you from the sort of overall sketch, if you know what I mean. Now, the second technique I'm going to show you, you might want to use a pencil for this, and I'll explain why in the demo. So one of the ways I like to show this technique is by being very, very literal and literally putting a house inside a box. So let's look at this reference drawing. We know how tall it is. How tall is it compared to how, wide it is? Let's say, for example, we want the side of the house to start here and to end there. We're going to put the house basically in the middle of the page here. So that's its overall width. So what are the ratios we're working with here? Well, we know that that wall is about there. So how high is the house overall compared to its width? Well, you can use your pencil and hold it up against it there. And I'd say it's kind of about there. It's sort of 4/5 really. So it's about that high. So let's take that round, and that's going to give us this point here. So there's our box. Our box contains, the overall height of the house and the overall width. Now, the reason why I didn't just draw a box and put a house in there is because it has to reference because you have to go from your reference photo and look at the overall width and the overall height, because you could just do a box of any shape and then draw a house within there, and it would look really weird compared to the reference drawing. So once we have our box, what do we do? Well, again, we actually look at points all along the side of that box. So where does the roof meet the side of this box that you've created? Well, the roof is about halfway down that slope there. And where is the other side of the roof? Well, the other side of the roof is a bit lower because of perspective. So that's at that point there. Now, where does the top of the roof meet? Well, that's going to be roughly in the middle. So we can connect those lines there like that. And how far along do we go with this side? Well, it's the same angle as that. So we can just draw that one in. So this is starting to develop now. We know that the roof sticks out a bit further than the side of the house, so we can put a little line in there. And then we know, so that is going to be down there like that. Right, so once we've done that, if you feel confident enough, we can start going over to our pen. So let's put a few more of those lines back in. So again, we can look at this box and go, if that's the edge of the box, we know that this wall is going to be in here a little bit. There we go. And we know that roughly that door is in the middle of that plane there. So let's draw those lines back in. So if it's in the middle of there, how do we find that middle in perspective? Well, the easiest way to do that is take your corners here, which is this one and this one and this one and this one, and join them together. Now I'm going to be quick, and I'm going to just join those together like that. And where those lines cross in the middle, that's the middle of there. Now there's perspective in here, and again there's two little windows up here. So how do we find the middle of that? Well, we just do the same again. So, and that's the middle point. So we can draw in, I'm going back to my pen here. I'm supposed to be doing this in fountain pen. We can draw in, there's a bit of an angle on that one, that window there. And we can draw in this window because that's going to align, the same alignment there as that one. And then we know there's a door here, which doesn't go all the way up, but almost. Again, you're observing as you're going. Basically, just create the box, and you're creating the box, and then you're sort of adding the house in and sort of slicing off sections, really. So when it comes to this technique of creating the box, the thing to remember is look at the ratio of the overall height to the overall width before you start this process. So say, for example, if you were sketching something like this, how wide is that compared to its height? And that's going to give you your box, and then you can start thinking about, well, how does it fit in there? And it may be that ultimately you add a bit on the bottom, but you see what I'm saying is you have to think about those ratios first, not just draw a box and put something in it. So the box technique is something that I've used a lot in my professional life as an industrial designer when I was doing that back in the day, when I was not but a boy. And you can use the box technique for drawing anything. Obviously, it's easy to put a box within a box if you're drawing houses or something, but actually you could draw any kind of organic shape, even jangle duck here in a box. You can just construct the box and then take away bits of it. But yeah, it's a really fun technique. So the third technique we're going to talk about today is a really fun one. This gets talked about a lot and called different things by different people, but I like to call it just make a big mess. So I'll stick with that. And out of that chaos, we're going to sort of carve something recognizable. So should we have a play? This is a fun one, so you're going to have to go for it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually turn the page around that way because I'm doing this as a portrait. So this is going to be an upright. So hopefully alongside we'll have the reference drawing here. The point is all the lines stay so that we can have the whole wonderful chaos of the drawing. So for this one, just vive la change, which is something to do with banking, I think. We're going to be using this little Coeco Sport fountain pen. And this is slightly different. It's a slightly finer nib than the Safari, so that's why I'm going to be using this. Now you can use these, you can post it. Now what I mean by post is you put the top of the pen on there and then use it like that, like a normal pen. A lot of people write like that. I don't tend to. I tend to hold a fountain pen a lot further like that. I have just noticed that there was a little bit of jam on the table here from breakfast with the kids. You know, you come for the English teeth and you stay for the professionalism. I know. Okay, so let's have a crack at this. So I know that looking at the model here, she's got such a beautiful smile, and we've got let's start with a bobble of hair at the back. And a pen that actually works. So I'm going to roughly think about the proportion of that bobble to the proportion of the head. And now it may look like I've gone mad here, but this is the kind of point of it, is we're not thinking too much. What we're doing is we're looking at the subject and we're not really looking necessarily at the page a lot. All the extra lines, and people think, oh, you're doing too many lines, you're spoiling it, but that's kind of the point of it, really. So I mean, straight away I'm moving this bobble because I think it's in the wrong place. So let me just push that in again there. And we're going to keep making shapes. Think about where that nose is. And then the nice thing about this technique is you can be really free. There is something in humans where we have an amazing pattern recognition system in our brains. So what we do is we can look at the moon and we can see that there's a face in it. We can see ghosts in the shadow of a building. You know, we have fantastic pattern recognition. It's part of our sort of software in our brains. So one of the reasons why this technique is so good is because what you do is you create far too many lines. You create far too many patterns. But the brain has a natural ability to go in, decode all that madness and choose a line. So effectively, instead of trying to do a drawing where every single line is perfect, what you're actually doing, I've stopped drawing because I can't talk and draw at the same time because I'm a bit daft. What you're actually doing is you're giving your brain several options, which is kind of easier in a way. So what you can start doing now is you can start to sort of refine these shapes and look at the drawing and then look a little bit more at our model here and think, well, how does that shape sort of correlate to that one? And then you can start cutting in with the pen, adding in some a lot thicker lines, and that's going to help to pull the detail out on the body. You know, it may be that there's some little shadows that you can add in, and then we're going to go and do this hair. So again, it's quite a quick technique, this. So this is the idea, is we sort of start by doing far too many lines, and then we sort of choose those lines, but this free sketching is very much how we start the process. So I hope you enjoyed that. This technique is, I always find, particularly fun for portraits. So again, there you can use it for sort of walking figures, you know, anything like that. So loads of lines, go a bit mad, really enjoy the process, do far too many, and then choose your lines and start cutting in, and don't be afraid to. So you can do loads and loads and loads and loads of small lines, and you think often far too much, if you know what I mean. But what you'll find is you can always go back in and create definition. You can always pick out a solid line from that. So even if you think you've done far too many lines, you can always just choose one and work on that. And all you need to do is just add in a lot of ink, and that will give you your contrast. So don't be afraid to have a play, okay? So before we start the last technique, I want to show you just a little bit about what makes fountain pens unique to draw with, very briefly. We're going to talk a little bit about the nibs and sort of line characteristics. So what's really unique about fountain pens? Well, what I think makes a fountain pen special compared to, you know, pencils or fine liners really is the variety of marks that you can make. Now the reason why that is because of these nibs that they have. So let me show you one here. So if you want to, you can make quite a thick line. So also, if you press very, very lightly, you can create quite a thin line. The other thing that you find is if you flip the nib over, you can create an even thinner line. But one of the nicest things is you can actually create a variation of lines at the same time. So you start off with a thin line, and then you flip the pen over, and then eventually you can get quite a thick line. But one of the things you might notice is you see this dot here. So if I press down and then stop, you see I get a dot either side there. That's another fun feature that you wouldn't necessarily get with other forms of mark making. You don't have to, as you can see here. Using the other side of the pen, it's not as thick, but there is a lot more, particularly when you get a nib. I mean, this is a bold or a broad nib. It can be quite wet. So you get some interesting line variation. You know, they can smudge. They are water soluble. You know, there's a lot of chaos and fun to be had with fountain pens, which is one of the reasons why I love them so much. And this Lamy Safari is, you know, pretty standard, cheap pen you can get for not more very much. So this is number 4. Now, the wonderful thing about fountain pens with water-soluble ink in is that you can add water and dissolve the ink and create all sorts of wonderful magic. Now, I have some more detailed tutorials on that in this video here, so do check that out. But I can show you some of the basics of that now, and we can have a bit of a play with that. For this, all you need is water and a brush, any old brush, maybe not a loo brush, or you can use a water pen. So this is a fun technique. It's perfect for urban sketching. If you're going out there and you want to be really light and travel light, you just carry a water brush and maybe a pen and your pad and you're away. So my final tip about how to draw anything with a fountain pen is actually more about the ink. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a sort of silhouette method here, and I'm going to draw in this chicken. Like a bit of a sort of continuous line style of drawing. Okay, and then again, I'm just keeping the pen here on the paper as much as I can, and if I don't like that line, I can go up and create another. Right, there we go, and then we've got this other leg that goes slightly forwards there. So that's vaguely our chicken. Now I know it's not quite the right proportion and shape and things, but we're not bothered about that really. We're going to put in a couple of the extra details here of this guy, like that. So we've got a bit of texture in there. Now there's stuff going on in the background, but we're just concentrating on this chicken. So the reason why I'm showing you this technique is because it's a really good way of creating light and dark or values in your sketch. And this is a water pen. Now you just simply fill them full of water. It's a really simple little thing. And then it's like a mobile brush really. It comes with its own water supply. You just start to paint that in. Choose this area under the bird here. You could even come down the front. Because you've got a little bit of ink now on that brush, you can start adding a little bit of texture. Maybe adding some shadows under here. Make some of those top feathers pop a little bit. Little bits of texture like that. So there we go. And that's really as simple or complicated as you want that to be. I can show you some more examples of that in these tutorials here. Have a look in the corner of the screen there. So yeah, do have a look at those. It's really fantastic technique, and that's only something you can really do with, water soluble ink, which is obviously what's in this fountain pen. So I hope you enjoyed that. You can use those techniques, tackle anything, go draw a car, a fish, a dog, yourself, your hand, literally anything that's around you. So yeah, give yourself some time today, have a coffee or a tea, or, have a whiskey, or, if it's morning, just a beer or a glass of wine. Give yourself some time to relax, put some music on and get creative. I think that losing yourself in art really sometimes is the best form of meditation, particularly if you've got a brain like mine that can't stop. It's, actually having your hands and brain slightly prepossessed with a task, whether it's sort of knitting or a jigsaw or wood turning or welding or restoring an old motorbike. It allows the bit of your brain that's a bit anxious to just chill out and find a bit of a happy place. All right, anyway, enough of my psychobabble. See you later. Go, be creative, crack on.